Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. My name is Kevin Bille, and as always, we appreciate you joining us here today. Well, hey, I'm excited for today. This guy he provides a lot of juice here. I know he's going to fire us all up. So we're with Heath Eslinger. He is the co-founder for A Better Way Athletics. Heath, what's going on?
Hey, man, thanks so much for having me on. I've been busting your chops, man. I want to be on the good stuff, and finally. You got to be ready in season and out of season. So I was ready.
You filled in, man. So I appreciate it. Well, hey, we got to go first back. I love this Better Way Athletics. You're pouring into me. You're pouring into all kinds of parents, coaches. But let's go back first to your wrestling days. That's your background. I'm always anxious to know, a high level athlete and coach. But what was it about the sport that you fell in love with?
Well, my brother, so I have an older brother. He's a pediatric dentist now, 2 years, 8 months older than me. So he had joined the wrestling team in junior high school, and he was coming home, and the beatings went from bad to worse that he would put on me when we would get in fights. So I tell people I went out for wrestling partly out of survival. Like, hey, man, if we're going to live together another 6 years, I've got to be able to defend myself. And so part of it was that I was a small kid in junior high school. The thing that's awesome about wrestling is that, it doesn't matter how small you are. They're going to put you in a weight class against another guy that's roughly your size. Wrestling's a unique sport. We've had a guy that won a Division I national championship with one leg. Anthony Robles, just an incredible human being. And so wrestling afforded this opportunity to, if you really wanted it, you could go get it and make it happen. And so I think that's what was intriguing to me about the sport of wrestling.
That's awesome. And I'm not going to speak about all your accolades because we don't have enough time here on the podcast, Heath, but I want to point out something, and maybe this is just the coach in me, but I want to point out something that I think is just much more impressive to me. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I want you to talk to me about this. You were voted captain all 4 years in college. That's unbelievable. Out of all the things you've done, the winning percentages and the accolades, to me, that's one of the most impressive things that speaks volumes to how you must have been as a teammate and leader for that team.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, I knew that I had made a decision when I chose to be a college wrestler, like, hey, I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm going to work harder than anyone else in the room. And I think if you do that, you give yourself a chance. And I think people take notice of that. And so, man, I was surrounded by some incredible humans. And fortunately, there was a lot of people that invested in me that made that possible, starting with my parents. My high school coaches were incredible and taught me a lot of things that were far more important than the X's and O's of wrestling or the skill involved in wrestling. And I think it just, it gave me it was almost like an unfair advantage, I feel like. And that's really what we want to do at A Better Way Athletics is help families and coaches know how to, like, listen, man, you may not have a great vertical, but you can do these things really well, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, kudos to them for embedding that into you in such a young age. The other thing I'd want to know about wrestling for you is what did it teach you to the core that, if I were to say right now, hey, what do you still use today because of it? What is it that's still carried on in your life and will continue to carry on?
Well, I think you had Tom Ryan on your show, and Coach Ryan talks a lot about suffering. And I think that's part of it. There's a guy named Richard Swenson that wrote a book called Margin. And margin is this space between your load and your limit. And each of us we're born with different limits. I mean, and a lot of times, life will allow us to be put in situations where the load is increased. And if managed the right way, appropriately, your limit increases. And so it's just like, you sign up for a 5K and then you do a 10K and then a half marathon, a marathon, then you do a 100-miler. You're increasing your limit by increasing your load. And I think what wrestling did for me is it allowed me to see that I was capable of, or my body was capable of so much more than maybe I even thought.
Yeah. Right.
And I think today 4 years ago, I did an Ironman and, people are like, you nervous? I'm like, man, this isn't even in the top 50 hardest things I've done. So I think that's what it really gave me from a suffering standpoint of like, man, we're capable of way more than we think.
That's so good. And yeah, Coach Ryan, he's dynamite, right? But
Yeah.
What you're saying there, I guess I'd want to follow up with, was that you that eventually found that out about yourself? And was there mental toughness or just an overall mentality there? Was it a coach that pushed you in that direction? Because I'm always going to believe, Heath, that as a coach, there's something in you that I can get out of you, right? And so what was it for you when it came to you discovering that, if you will?
Well, one of the things I like to teach families and coaches, because I think we do a bad job of this as well in our culture today, or we struggle with it, is that a lesson can't be learned if a lesson isn't allowed. And so as a parent or coach or leader, what we do is we put people in positions to really test themselves. We call it a competition game, whatever, but really they're just tests. I love the word test. If you trace it back to its original origin, it means to prove in a good sense. You know what I mean? And so what we do as leaders is we put people in opportunities to test themselves. Now, what happens today too often is that when we see them struggling with that test, we run to the rescue too early. And so what we do there is we rob them of the opportunity to gain confidence when they overcome, because we step in and do it for them. And then, well, they didn't really do it themselves. So we rob them of the confidence, but we also rob them of the resiliency they need as they overcome. And so for me, it was, I can remember, true story. My parents dropped me off on a Sunday morning. I was a sophomore in high school. I didn't know if I wanted to be good yet or not, but I knew I needed to test myself. And it was a Sunday morning. We got out of church. There's a little hamburger joint called the Quick Burger. It's this little trailer where you turn to head down in the country to my house. And I had my parents drop me off there on a Sunday morning. I had no cell phone, no water bottle, and it was exactly 10 miles from my house. And man, as soon as I got out of the car, man, my parents took off. They were like, I'm going home to eat. Like, this is on you. But I can remember stepping into my driveway and thinking, okay, I can do more than I thought. Now, had my mom followed me the whole way, or my dad, I think I would have been robbed a little bit of that. So I think the thing that twofold. One, you always need people around you that are guiding you. All right. But if you always have people around you that are doing it for you, then it ends up robbing you. And so I was very blessed with parents and coaches who guided, but didn't just constantly provide. And so I was fortunate, man. I don't know why I was so lucky, but I want to help others be as lucky as me. That's my mission.
That's great. Why do we rescue them? Because I'm sitting here as a parent, and listen, the resiliency thing to me is, I think it's everything, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't rescue them every now and again, and I think it's because I care about them. I love them. And it's tough to listen. I've been a coach. I've been in a lot of games. Nothing is more nerve wracking to me, Heath, than watching my kids compete. And I know how good failure and all those lessons are for them. But why am I rescuing them at times?
So great quote. You're a basketball guy. Tony Bennett has a great quote, head coach at the University of Virginia. And man, I use this clip all the time, but they ask him like, hey man, is this the greatest moment? And he goes, man, I go back to something my dad said, when they won, they actually beat Purdue in the Final Four. And he says, when you understand what truly matters, it enables you. It almost is the key that unlocks. When you understand what truly matters, it enables you to enjoy what seems to matter.
Amen.
And so why is it so hard for us to watch our kids struggle? Here's the first thing. It's painful, man. Watching your 13-year-old daughter get benched is not fun. All right? If you do think it's fun, you're sick in the head. You know what I mean? Like, you need another set of counselors.
Right.
So the first thing we have to identify is it's painful, but pain is a necessary part of growth. And so the goal is not to neglect or act like the pain is not real, but it's to manage the pain appropriately so that they can grow. The second thing that's hard for parents and coaches when it comes to this is validation. We have placed so much social capital on what our kids are doing and achieving, whether that be academically or athletically, is that when we see our kids fail, there's an insecurity inside of all of us that goes, well, this is a reflection of me. And so in order for this to be fixed, I need to do more, offer more, provide more for my child, which again, coach, robs them of the opportunity to figure it out. And so one of the principles we teach at A Better Way is don't let protection and provision trump preparation. Do we need to protect our children? Yeah, but not, I mean, like, listen, man, they need to wreck their bike. They need to like get cut every now and then, from a team. The other thing is provision. I love what Dr. Tim Elmore says. I got a crush on him, but
hey, he was on here too. He was,
dude, I know, I posted, I was jealous. You know what I mean? He's phenomenal, but Tim Elmore says there's danger in abandonment, but there's equally as much dangerous in abundance. And so what happens is it's provision, and the kids never figure anything out, and it's not their fault. And so as a leader, the goal has to be with our young people is how do I prepare them?
Mm-hmm.
How do I because listen, man, at 14 or 15, they're walking on their own. I don't care how much you try to step in. When you hand them a set of car keys, if they're that scared to death, like it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I could go on and on. But I'm excited to get this message out.
Yeah, it's a great message. Let's just go back though a little bit to your path after wrestling. You go into coaching, and then you go into being a student pastor.
Yeah, crazy, man.
Before we talk about going back into coaching, just talk to me a little bit about that experience.
Well, I'm a follow me principle guy. I believe great leadership starts with strategic followership. And obviously that's true in the faith. I mean, Jesus was a guy who's boiled it down pretty simple, like get over you, be willing to embrace some tough things, and then follow me. And I'm a big believer in this, coach, is that if I follow Christ today, he'll get me to the right place tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And if I string a few weeks of that together, he'll get me to the right place next month. And if I string a few months of that, he'll get me to. So again, I've been very fortunate, and it is not Heath Eslinger, man. God has put some incredible people around me that in some weak moments, they have guided me and I have yielded to their instruction. And so, how did I end up a student? Man, I was just following Christ. It was a great season of growth. I don't want to go back to it.
Right.
Then got back into coaching, landed the UTC job. I didn't want it, but it was what God had for us. And then I believe all of it was culminating with where we land today.
Right.
I mean, literally today.
Right. Yeah, for sure. What we should have injected this earlier, and it's a commonality in our lives, but faith has been a mainstay for you through all of this. I mean, was that at the forefront of all your decisions that we're going to continue to talk about that you're making in your personal and professional life?
Yeah. Ask that one more time, because I want to answer this correct.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that the faith part, it's been a mainstay through all of this. And so I'm just anxious to know, was that always at the forefront of these decisions that you're making in your personal and professional life?
Again, I go back to my parents. They laid a great foundation. Mm-hmm. And listen, man, there were times in my life as a middle school, high school student, I didn't get it. But one of my mentors, Robert Green, who actually works for FCA, he always says, you got to trust the seed. And like my parents planted the right seeds. And so as a senior in high school, I realized that this life wasn't, I kind of had everything there was to offer and was missing some joy, and really began to pursue my faith. And I think from that point forward, it has been a journey. It has not been easy, and I have totally messed up at times, but it's always of the utmost importance when we make decisions that is this the direction that God has for us? Is this what we need to be doing? Mm-hmm. And not just chasing after our own like selfish desires. And I believe, man, listen, God's gifted all of us with different things. And so he gives us the privilege of doing these things. And so that's what I'm grateful for. He's not trying to hold us back. He's really trying to set us free. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So you're done with the student pastor, you go to Cleveland High School, obviously you have a lot of success. And then in 2009, as you mentioned, you're going to Chattanooga. What was it? Do you remember? I know it's been a dozen years ago, but what intrigued you to make that move at that time? Nothing intrigued me. I did not want to make the move. I drove down there in like my 1993 Honda Accord. I was teaching school. I had 3 kids at the time. We had just had a set of twins. dude, I lived a mile from the school. We had a $2 million wrestling facility. Like, I mean, listen, I had it made. Like, I mean, this was like Little House on the Prairie perfection. You know what I mean? Just, we had electricity. But man, I went to my interview, and our athletic director, Rick Hart, who's now the athletic director at SMU, used to have him on sometime. Incredible leader, human. I just knew, man. I honestly left McKenzie Arena that day, and I started weeping. And I called my wife, and I just said, "We got to go."
Wow.
And man, but again, you look back and you go, I wouldn't have a relationship with Tom Ryan. I wouldn't have a relationship with all these different people and the doors that have been open. And even again, and we'll get to this today, we're making an announcement. Like, even the person that is involved here, I never would have met had I not been the head coach at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. So it's always so much bigger than we actually think.
Yeah, that's good. What I think I know this answer. Now, I went the opposite way. I went college to high school, which I wouldn't encourage that for anybody. What were the differences to you, though, that you noticed from high school to college? And then were there any similarities?
Well, I think the major difference is, if your kid gets in trouble in high school, he gets in school or detention. If he gets in trouble in college, they sometimes go to jail. And so that's a glaring one. I'll be honest, I didn't feel there was a ton of, I'll tell you this. I think high school coaches are the hardest working people in America.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
Listen, when I was at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, I didn't have bus duty. I didn't have lunch duty. I wasn't on the prom committee. I didn't have to be at the homecoming dance. Listen, to all the high school and middle school coaches out there, from a college coach, I say thank you.
For sure.
Because you are the difference makers. Even when I interview people, most people will go all the way back to their middle school or high school coach as their greatest impact. And so to me, there was a little bit more flexibility because I wasn't in class with 30 people, 5 or 6 times a day. Mm-hmm. And so, but from a directional standpoint, it boils down to, do I have a vision, and can I get people excited about heading there? And so whether they're 15 or they're 21, that remained the same. Whether it's coaching or it's in business, that remains the same.
So you're coaching, you're having a lot of success, but then you're just feeling there's more to do, right? And so there's an issue out there, and you recognize it. And I read somewhere to the point you said, I can either be a part of the problem or I can be a part of the solution. Is that right?
That's 100% it. And I can remember the exact chair that I was sitting in when that thought went through my head. And I just realized, man, I saw so many kids, and I was talking to so many coaches at the collegiate level that were saying all these, kids today have no coping skills. I'm like, well, because we never let them cope. All right. So like, we're a part of the problem. Or kids are entitled. I'm like, yeah, but the systems we use create the things we despise. And so we're a part of the problem. And, I saw so many kids with gifts and skills that got them to a room, their character wouldn't allow them to stay. And like, wow, well, we were just passing them through the system. I call it sport prostitution. We just pimp them out and like, we'll get them through us and then let somebody else deal with their issues. Well, at some point, like they're in trouble, and it's not good. And so, man, we began to think through, what would it look like? Because right now in the sport world, you have mom and dad who love their child, who are trying their best. Coach calls them crazy. We call it a misapplication of love. Why do I step in and rescue? Because I love them so much. But love misapplied can be dangerous. I can love a new car, but I can't go steal one. I have to what's called pay for it. That's why I don't have a new car, because I don't have the money to pay for it. But then on the coaching side, you have coaches who say they love this kid, and I really think they do. But sometimes we get misaligned. And so you have this child in the middle who is awesome, who's getting pulled by the two people or the organizations that love them the most, and they're the ones that suffers. And so what we believe at A Better Way Athletics is, man, sport's an arena for growth, but only if we plant what is good. And so we want to provide a playbook for a positive sport experience. And man, as we've said earlier, and it just got announced, I haven't even seen it on social media because we're on this podcast, but we just got acquired by a company called HBG Core, who owns ARM Software, is the leading athletic management software company in America. Incredible people. Mike Hurt, the founder of that So A Better Way just got acquired by them, and we're getting ready to put this thing on rocket fuel. When I met Mike, he said, it really takes three things. It takes capital, it takes an entrepreneurial spirit or idea, and it takes operational expertise. I had one of those. And you can probably guess which one it was. And so, a lot of people will go try to find capital and then they just spend it and squander it, which is what I probably would have done, not out of neglect, but just out of not knowing. Man, we are so fortunate that we get to partner with them because they are providing us both, the capital and the operational expertise, and they are phenomenal. They're an unbelievable organization and just incredible humans. And so my partner and I, Eric Phillips, are ecstatic today to be joining this new movement.
That's awesome. Congratulations and kudos to you guys. So, I'm a parent of three. My boys are 14, 12, and 6. We're in the tornado of all the activities and going everywhere and anywhere. But man, Heath, there's just such a balance to all of this. Like I think of myself and just, my competitiveness to the umpteenth level, whether I'm playing checkers versus my mom or, whatever it is, but then also versus, all the valuable lessons out of this. I just, and then I would even think back to like how I was brought up, how I was coached versus how my sons are being brought up or coached. That's a big thing. How does Better Way, just provide maybe an example or two, but how does A Better Way make me better in my role, first and foremost, as a parent?
So one, we're going to force you to look in the mirror because, man, listen, we all have struggles. And one of the first things we're going to try to teach is to help the parent understand that they don't need to get so consumed with what matters now that they lose sight of what matters most. Mm-hmm. My role as a parent is to focus on who my kid is becoming, not what they're doing or achieving. And when we get those backwards, again, what happens is we end up having a kid that gets to a room, their character won't allow them to stay. And so one of the things we're going to help families understand, and even coaches, because we got to do this as coaches too, is what are our systems and processes that are focusing on who this child is becoming? And one of the struggles, because we live in this fast forward world, and because we see the world through our 44 years of life, because I hear coaches say all the time, well, the kid just doesn't love it like I do. I'm like, well, no kidding. You're 40, they're 14.
Right.
All right. They're intrigued with Snapchat, And so one of the things we have to realize and protect against is wanting our kids to be now what we had to become. Because if we want them, obviously it would be our desire, and in a perfect world, like our kid could just know every mistake we made and never make them again. But the battle wounds help them become who they're going to be. And so because, again, we love them so much, we want to rush in and protect and provide them with everything to miss that. But part of walking through that is what prepares them for this thing called life that doesn't apologize. And so I would say to a family, your family, hey, don't get so consumed with what matters now. You lose sight of what matters most. You're really mad they lost the 12U baseball game. No one cares.
Right.
No one cares. And what did they learn and become that day that's still beneficial for them? Because they're going to wake up tomorrow.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, what is the most common thing? Is it when they try to live their life through their kids, or is it when they call grandma and she asks, "Did you win? And how many points did you score?" Right? Like those are the things.
So we even have a module on that. And so one of our modules is how to develop a team player. Listen, coach, no parent at 11 is going, listen, we're going to do whatever it takes to have the most selfish, entitled, arrogant kid on the high school team. Yet a lot of parents unintentionally are creating that type of human. And so because you're exactly right. I had to learn this the hard way. My daughter was 12. She called me. I said, "How'd you do?" And I kicked myself right in the teeth. And so we have a system like, hey, how did your team do? Who played well on the team? And then how did you do? It's just a strategy to create unselfishness versus entitlement. But you have to have that strategy or you'll just get caught in the stream of how'd you do? How many points did you score? Well, at the end of the day, nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely does. It's a shifter perspective. I really like the exercise, Kyle Stark, who was at the Pirates, and then Clint Hurdle. One thing I like with them that used to do that just permeated through the whole culture, even if I got off this conversation with you, kind of doing like a one up, one down. And it wasn't like one down is just negative. It was just something else to improve or to work on, and I do that sometimes, with my boys, hey, you're round today in golf. How was your day at school? Eventually a couple questions, then we get to that. You got a one up today you can celebrate. Yeah, man. I had a really good attitude out there today. Nothing to do with, what was your one down? Yeah, just maybe my response to things, or it just seems to be really healthy and a good conversation. I feel like that's the thing we miss out on sometimes, is just having that conversation. And I don't know if this I don't know if this relates to you or not, but it's like, I think sometimes they just need me to be their friend and not their dad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just something we miss out on sometimes. So that's crucial for me. You guys say one other thing that's right on your website that I love it. And I just like you to tell us like what it truly means to you when you say we are here to restore the joy of sport.
Well, Coach, I can remember like when my kids first started playing sports, and I would walk into these gyms and stuff, and I'm like, no one here is having fun. I mean, the parents are so wound tight, the coaches are wound tight because of the officials are a nervous wreck. And so all of that spills over to the kids. I mean, and so I can remember sitting there going, this was meant to be joyful. And like everybody said, well, I'm just so competitive. Bull crap. No, you're selfish. Like you're not competitive. You're just a little bit selfish. And so like, I was like, how can we make this better? And we only make it better through perspective. And again, it's why Tony Bennett, if you're out there, man, I love you for enlightening me with this quote. I can't wait to meet you one day. But when I walk into that gymnasium, that fifth grade elementary basketball game that is painful to watch, I don't care how good they are. When you walk in and you understand what truly matters in this day, I can actually sit back and go, you know what? That was fun. Yeah. All right, let's go get another sweet tart sucker. But when you go in and you lose sight of what truly matters, you'll get so caught up in what seems to matter, it'll rob you of all your joy. And so we want to help restore the joy for the family. Like I'm going to watch my daughter play today in a super competitive game, 2 of the top teams in the state. Win or lose, it's not going to change my life or her life.
Right.
I need to walk in there and be looking for the things she does well as a human. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, dude, you're going to have some bad games, but you can still be a great person. And so when I understand that perspective, it restores the joy of it for me. Right. Because it's not life and death.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Do you have any tips or tools? I'd be anxious to know when it comes to coaches with parents, because how do they get them on the bus, and then how do they keep them there? Like I remember as an AD in high school, it was like, listen, you can either fight this and resist this, or you can welcome it. If you fight it or resist it, somebody on the board is going to be happy in 2 or 3 years, and you're probably not going to be here. Right. And then on top of this, which a better way is so phenomenal at, is we hire these coaches that aren't equipped with anything. They're young. We don't have hardly anybody to pick from. And then, oh, by the way, here, go coach this team. And we're not going to do anything to help you along the way because they don't have the resources, or they're pouring into them as teachers, so on and so forth. So what would you say to the coaches that are listening at whatever level it is? What are some of those things, Heath, that you could do to get them on board and keep them there?
Well, it's why we're so excited about HBG Core acquiring us, because they are going to provide us the operational expertise to actually implement some of these things even better. But the first thing the coach has to do is I've got to realize that the parent is my number one customer. They are my number one customer. Listen, Disney doesn't sell tickets to 8-year-olds because 8-year-olds can't afford it. They sell tickets to families. And so Disney knows if the mom and dad are they can be a little miserable, but if they're really miserable, they won't purchase another set of tickets the next year. And so Disney does a good job of making sure they target, mom and dad. Well, in the athletic world, here's what we say, Coach. We say, Parents, here's what I need you to do. I need you to work concessions, sell coupon cards, be at the car wash, have your kid here 6 days a week. And by gosh, don't be late. And don't call me when I let them out of practice 45 minutes late. But then understand this, don't talk to me about playing time. Well, to me, that's the dumbest thing ever. That's the most egotistical operations of relationships that is unheard of. And here's what's crazy, Coach. I've been guilty.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What we believe is we have to invite the parent on the journey with us. And so we teach coaches how to engage the family, how to invite them on the journey. And so, I mean, we have a full scope online learning platform for coaches, parents, athletic directors, sport organizers that we truly believe can help, that is going to, without a doubt, is going to change the game when we think of sport over the next 3, 5, 10 years. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'd be anxious to know, is there a non-negotiable to you? And maybe it's more than one that you feel every coach they need to have?
Yeah. The non-negotiable is that I will always be the professional. That's the non-negotiable. Like, I mean, I truly believe this, and I'm to the point where, like, listen, man, if a parent wants, here's the thing about playing time, Coach. You know why parents want to talk about playing time? Because it's the only thing we measure. Yeah. And if it's the only thing we measure, it's the only thing they have to validate this whole dang journey. Like, and so, like, as a coach, what we do is we step in and we help the coach create some other metrics that are measurable. And then we help the coach know how to communicate that the child is actually doing these things well. Because if the only thing we measure is playing time and performance, well, if my kid's not playing, what I begin to tell myself is, well, coach thinks my kid is terrible. They're never going to be a contributor on this team. And the coach may be going, man, little Kevin is the most improved kid on the team. He's going to help us next year. But because they don't know how to communicate growth, the parent gets frustrated. And when the parent gets frustrated, who gets frustrated next? The kid, because they're hearing it on the car ride home.
That's right.
And so what we do is we step in some simple ways, help the coach know how to communicate progress. And so, you know how easy it is for me to call Kevin and say, hey, man, I just want you to know that, man, your son is crushing it. Man, right. I am so proud of who he's becoming. And I'm telling you, he is working his tail off. He's improved in X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? That turns the volume down on your frustration. But that needs to be expected of our coaches.
Yeah, that's really good.
Of ourselves. For sure.
We're gonna hop into 3-pointers here in a second. You mentioned one book earlier, Margin. Do you have another? You're a big reader. You have a favorite book? We always like to plug.
Golly. I mean, you know, I just read Win the Day by Mark Batterson. It's phenomenal. He actually has some things in there on practice. If you're a coach, on deliberate versus naive practice, it is absolutely phenomenal. Just blows the 10,000 hour rule up, blows that, you know, as coaches, we say, give 100%. Like, come on, man.
You're going to laugh at me, but I literally was just emailing with him before I hopped on here with you, because we are doing this book on a Saturday morning group of guys. And I had Mark on here, and I mean, I couldn't second that recommendation more. Unbelievable dude and book.
Unbelievable. Two other books. These are a little harder though. So one is called The Vanishing American Adult.
Okay.
By a guy named Ben Sass. And then the other one is called The Coddling of the American Mind. I mean, so good when it comes to this idea of rescuing too early, not letting our kids mature. I mean, we are just unintentionally creating some detrimental things long-term. And again, no one is doing it on purpose. But if we don't zoom out and gain some perspective, man, we're going to see another cycle. I don't want to say, when I say this generation, I talk about everyone that's living and breathing right now. Because if the world is screwed up, my 14-year-old had less to do with it than me, because I'm 44. And so I'll take the blame. Yeah. But at some point, I got to be a part of the solution. And so those books are really good. Another great book, Tim Elmore. Oh my gosh. Again, I'm jealous that you had him on the show, but 12 Huge Mistakes Parents Make.
Yeah.
I mean, it will, again, dude, I teach and speak about this stuff, and it still just kicks me in the gut. But if you want to get better, you got to be willing to get kicked in the gut every now and then. One of my mentors, Larry Bry, he's the pastor at Elevation Church. He said a few weeks ago, I was listening to something, and he said, man, it's the people who are used the most are offended the least. Wow. And so sometimes you got to be willing to get a little offended to be used. And even as a parent, if I want to get better, like I got to listen to Coach Bille and him say like, hey, you got to quit stepping in here. Mm-hmm. Same is true of coaches. You got to communicate better here. And so what's true of Heath Eslinger or what's true of everyone else is true of Heath Eslinger. I don't have this figured out, man. This thing is complicated. Yeah, for sure. That's good. Well, hey, rapid fire to finish. You can take a little longer if you want here, but just to wrap things up, I call this 3-pointers. I don't know how your jumper is, Coach. Maybe we should do like 3 takedowns. Yeah,
3
no
takedowns.
Kidding, man. It's bad.
Well, there are 3 takedowns it is. All right. Okay. Number 1, if people could learn one thing from this talk and just you'd want them to grab hold on to that one thing, what would you want it to be?
Zoom out. It's big. Focus on who people are becoming, not just what they're doing or achieving. Focus on who they're becoming.
So if Heath could have come over here today and been Kevin and talked to Heath or asked him questions, what question would have you asked Heath that I did not ask today? You get to hold me accountable here a little bit.
I always ask who was the greatest influence in your personal life? And I would 100%. I will say my father, but I would have to say my mom as well, because they were unified, man. They were in such alignment, and it was like, it almost like just gave me and my brother an unfair advantage. You know, my brother's a pediatric dentist. And so one of the things I don't even know if they did it intentionally, but my parents did a really good job of focusing on what I call long haul attributes. Long haul attributes are things that they stand the test of time. All right. And they cross all boundaries. And so like resilience stands the test of time. Wrestling holds don't stand the test of time. I don't wrestle anymore. And so, you know, my parents did a really good job of focusing on those long haul attributes. And so my brother used it in the academic world, and it worked. He's a pediatric dentist. My wife even said she married the wrong Eslinger. I chose the athletic world. Guess what? They worked. Because they just work. And so focus on who they're becoming. I would ask, who's been your greatest influence? That's always intriguing to me.
Good question. Finally, good stuff's the name of this, Coach. Give us some good stuff in closing. Maybe anything you feel is appropriate for right now.
Well, I want to first of all say thank you for having me on. And I want to say how much I love the word good. Man, we live in a society, and I give credit to my friends at 3D Coaching for this. You should have him on at some point, Wes Simmons at 3D Coaching. But the word good is a unique word. And so we love the word great. And great is the evaluation of what we do. We love Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. You know, everyone's read it. Now, what no one realizes is Circuit City is out of business now, and it was the thing the book was about. So, you know, maybe it wasn't bulletproof. But so great is the evaluation of what we do. Good is the essence of what we do. And so whether that be in parenting, coaching, or leadership, it's so easy to get caught up in the great, the scoreboard, the outcome, the fanfare, but it's really the good that changes people's lives. And if you go all the way back to what I believe is that when all of this existence began and God finished, he didn't say, man, this is great. He said, no, this is good. And if you look in scripture, the word good actually means approved or stamped by God. And so, man, he works all things for our good. It's approved by him, you know? And so I truly believe that, like, if we could get back, and Tony Bennett, love you, man. When we understand what truly matters, the good, it enables us to enjoy what seems to matter, the great. And so, man, thank you for letting me be a part of some good today.
Hey, if anybody asks me why I call it good stuff instead of great stuff, I'm playing this clip because that's said a lot better than me, but I couldn't agree more. Hey, let's real quick. I know you made the big announcement. 2 things though. First thing, where can our listeners connect with you, social media wise, please?
So they can go to, it's 2021, man. Search Heath Eslinger, A Better Way Athletics, Instagram, Facebook. Hopefully we're going to get a lot better at that stuff in the next few months, because we have a team behind us now, the greatest team out there, HBG Core. And so they can go to our website, abetterwayathletics.com. If you are a sport director, if you are a coach, if you are a principal, superintendent, athletic director, we believe that we have some foundational things that can help your organization and team and families and coaches navigate this thing in just a much healthier way. And so we're in this journey with you. You're going to see some incredible things continue to take place. But I know this, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. And so if people continue to do nothing, we will keep getting the same result. And so I just challenge every leader out there to let's do something to make it better for our kids.
Well, and then that was the second thing. I'm glad you did plug the website, because I know there's a blog on there, videos, resources, a podcast. And that's what I'm going to say in closing, Heath, that is so commendable to me. You know, I just appreciate, you know, in general, who you are and what you're doing. And I think what you just alluded to, I can tell that's your life mission, because most people talk about it more than most complain about it, you know, and you're living it out, Heath, and you're truly impacting, you know, not only individuals and there's these people, but families, you know, and organizations and teams and athletics and everything you're doing. I just keep up the great work, my man. I'm a big fan, and I look forward to staying in touch with you. And I appreciate you coming to bat for me today and being on here.
Man, there's a tribe in Africa called the Maasai tribe. And the Maasai tribe, when they greet each other, they don't say, "How are you doing?" They're greeting, and if I'm not mistaken, it's Cassandra and Gary. I don't speak that language, but the greeting is this: "Are the children well?" And so the Maasai tribe, they focus on the well-being of the children because they know that the children are the next generation of the community, city, whatever. And so, man, at A Better Way Athletics, we want to help people know and understand how to make sure the children are well, because our kids deserve us to be doing that.
Good stuff, my man. Thanks again for being on here. We'll continue to stay in touch. Hey, everybody, thanks again always for listening. You can email me at goodstuffkevin@gmail.com. I can't wait to hear what you think of this episode. Get on over there to A Better Way. If you're a parent, if you're a coach, I highly encourage it. And as always, we appreciate you joining us. And until next time, good stuff.